And we're live.
So, welcome to yet another session on Scopes. This time, we will run you through a couple of examples how to implement quickly Scopes. That is, first of all, me giving you guys an overview and moderating this event. That's Thomas Strehl, heading the Scopes development. Then we have Marcus Tomlinson here with us. He is one of the core developers for the Scopes infrastructure, mostly taking care about all the real backend stuff around registry, about the data flow and everything. Then we have also with us Pavel Stolovsky. He is basically a little bit more front-end oriented, if you can say. So he's taking care of everything, like how to move the data towards the shell to get finally visualized. The structure of this meeting is in the best case, you would just let us know on the RC what you always wanted to know about scopes. Feel free at any time to interrupt us. If you basically, if you just want to watch, then we have prepared a menu for you guys. The menu we have on as a starter to basically explain how to customize scopes, adding a little bit of branding, spending 5 minutes on that. Then we will continue walking you through how to use settings and also how to use location. So that already forms a little bit the main course. And the real main course, I think the big one, is how to use departments within a scope. And as a dessert, we have a little bit more tweaks around customizing your categories, etc. Again, this is what we propose. It's obviously not always to everybody's taste, so feel free to order something in between. We will try to accommodate you as best as we can. As a good starting point, and something that you all guys have, is what we will use is basically just standard SDK, what you can download. We will start from the normal Qt or from the normal Scopes template. So, whatever we show, you can easily recreate. You don't need to download a lot of code, even though we will provide the code afterwards. And I think, we will just open a repository and put it in. But, the starting point is really the template, so it doesn't require you anything else to have set up before. So it should be easy to reproduce, easy to follow. And we hope that whatever we show you actually also makes a little bit of sense contextual-wise, even though it's a little tricky sometimes to just expand existing scopes. So with that, first in the menu, we have some kind of customization and branding, and moving over to Marcus.
Okay. All right. How do I? Okay. Everyone can see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to start from scratch so that we can really see how to do everything. So what you need to do, obviously, is install the Ubuntu SDK. Gives you a nice icon there, and then we're going to open it up to start developing our scope. Okay, so you get this nice front page. You want to say create new project. On this list, Unity scope. Let's choose that one. Okay, we want to give a name for our scope. We're gonna build on the template as it is. So the template currently uses Open Weather Map. So we're going to call it Open Weather Map. You can pick where you want to install it. Yeah, let's just do it that way. Let me give it a scope name here. And then we can pick what template we want to use. The top one is probably the most comfortable with everyone, Qt, HTTP, and JSON. So we're just going to use that first template. We can pick some outputs. I'm going to pick my two roots here. We may have time to see how to build ARM, but it's kind of out of the scope of this. So we're going to do that. I don't want to add it to my version control. So cool. So we begin on the first page, which is our manifest. This is basically a very top-level config of our project. You may want to just give it a description. I'm not going to do that, but you can give it a description of your scope, give it a name, but the name should be filled in from what we did. I'm just going to do a very quick run through of the state of the project as you start. So going from the top, we got a data folder. Data, what will be in here is our scope any file. It's got a very long name, but that's just the full com Ubuntu developer me everything. In here will be where you set up scope related config. I'll come back to this. This is actually where most of the appearance settings get set. We have some source files. I'm just going to open them up so that they're all visible, and some tests which you can write when you're done. Okay, so let's begin actually just by running it. You can hit F5 or
maybe Marcus, it's worth spending another half a minute and just we introduced the ini file as like one of probably 3 important files any scope developer should look at. The other files you might be very likely to touch is actually the query CPP plus the client CPP. Maybe spending a minute on those two.
Okay.
Would be great.
Okay, sure. So I'm just going to kill this when it runs. All right. Can't look at it now. Okay. All right. So let's go through here. We have a class, client class. This is nothing scope specific, but it's nice. Helper class that's in the template for splitting out your HTTP API from the rest of your scope. Config works hand in hand with the client. This sets our user agent API route. We're using OpenWeatherMap. Let's go down. Okay, so in our scope folder, you see localization has just got a magic underscore method for your localization strings. That's useful. But really, what we want to look at here is our preview query and scope files. Here are our headers and here are our source files. So really the entry point to your scope is the scope class, and you can see in the implementation there we have a start method. This gets called when your scope starts, and then you'll have a search and preview method, two methods, search and preview, and that is search when you type a query in your search bar, and preview when you tap one of your results. Now, search corresponds to the query class. You return a query, and preview obviously corresponds with a preview object that you return from these methods. So nothing really needs to be done in this file. Boilerplate code mostly. It's given to you as you start. Looking into query. Query is is where you will put your main run function for your query. This is where all the magic happens for a search. You get a reply object that you need to push back on for your results. We should cover some of this as we go through it. But basically, this is where your search logic happens. And similar for preview, you can have a run method where your preview magic happens. Any further questions? Is that good enough?
I do have a question, Marcus. So looking at the, I'm just going to switch to your screen. So looking at the files, so someone who's new to Scopes development and has already experience with C++, the first thing that they should get started on, or the first thing that they should probably modify, if I understand it correctly, it's going to be the ini file, client, and preview and query.cpp, right? So the scope.cpp is mostly boilerplate code, you are saying?
Yeah. Yeah, there's mostly boilerplate code. You can add a bunch of other, logic into your start method. Example, say you want to, store some state when your scope starts up that you might want to pass into your query objects and your preview objects that can be used during queries and previews. In most cases, you wouldn't need to edit this file. In most cases, you wouldn't have to edit it much, but it's.
So I think what we're saying here, if you're new, the thing that really where you should start looking at code to understand it as a very first step looking into the run function of the query class. That is really the beat.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm just going to try something. Okay. I think focus keeps switching back to other people when they talk, but I'm not sure how to change that. Anyway, so yeah, that's an overview of what you get when you start. Essentially, there's some logic in this query run method. I mean, it's easy just to hit run, and then we can see what it's doing. So currently, it's using the open weather map. We have a main result here that tells us weather currently in London, and a 7-day forecast shows down there. It's really all it does at this point. It's as I go through it, you'll see it's really easy. Everything is kind of set out for you to edit as you go, and it makes things really simple to actually have this as a starting point, and we'll see how that works now. All right, so first thing that anyone should do is start at the ini file, because this is going to be your config for your scope. And you can already see there's some things here that you wouldn't want to leave that way. So let's begin. Okay, so author, let's actually put something. We're going to say canonical. All right. So first of all, let's look at appearance. Currently, if we look at our scope, we have an Ubuntu logo here. That's not quite what we want. We want to change that logo. If you notice in your ini file as well, you have references to 2 other PNG files, an icon file and a screenshot. These are in your data folder. They're relative paths. So if I go to our data folder in the project, you'll see that's the logo we had, icon and screenshot. So what you need to do is obviously change those if you want some branding. And the easiest way to do it is to just replace these files with some better ones. So I have gone ahead and gotten an icon and made a logo, and also got a screenshot from the future. Okay. So once you replace these files, I mean, you don't need to change these paths, obviously, because they're pointed to the same names. So if we just build and run again, we should immediately see that. Ooh, okay, we don't see that. There was something odd about this. Let me try a rebuild. One thing that may need to happen is the ini file needs to be configured, which only occurs in a CMake run. Let's just give it another build and see.
So in other words, if you just like edit the ini file and you just save that file and you run, just execute the scope again with the scope tool, you will not see changes. So very important here to just hit the build button, then it's copied over, configured.
Yeah.
Always remember that.
Right, which I forgot. So always remember that. As you can see, our new logo is being put in here. That's pretty cool. The icon and screenshot, I wonder if I can just very quickly, I need to build the click. Sorry, some of this is a little out of scope in using the SDK. From here, you can select a different build that you want. I have some roots, so I want to just create my click package. What I'm going to do is just build that click package so that I can show you where the icon is. But while that's building, let's carry on. All right, so first of all, we notice that that doesn't look very nice. So we can do some other branding. We can change the colors of this section here. And this section is called the page header. So one thing to bear in mind is this is all documented and documented quite well. If you go to developer Ubuntu API scopes, you can get our document here. And in this document, we do have a section for what goes into the scope config file. So here are some of the config entries, and here are some appearance entries. So let's change a few things with the page header. If we look here, we see we've got foreground, background, divider color. Let's start adding something here. So we got page header. What we can do is set the foreground. Sorry. What you want to do here is put in some hex values, and I don't have those in my head, so what's cool to do is find some kind of color picker and pick some colors. So what we want to do is find some colors here. Let's go for a dark red for our foreground color. You can have a background, which you can also set. Now, yeah, some of these entries require a scheme URI, which looks like it's documented here. Color gradient. The way you can tell is if the word color appears at the end of the parameter, then you know it's just a straight color, as I did a hex value. Or if you got background, you need to set a URI. But what's cool is you can do some stuff like gradient setting. So if we set the gradient, we can. I'm just going to insert some values here that I got from the color picker before, because otherwise it's going to take me forever. But just put some nice values in here. That's my favorite one. That page header. All right, so foreground and background. Let's just see what that looks like so far. We can already see what we should see. Sorry, wrong build selected. Is the color of the search, and the favorite should change to that dark maroon that I picked, and I got a nice gradient. And when you hit search, the gradient actually moves a bit, and it looks quite nice. One thing actually, while I'm at it, this search hint here, you can change by adding to your scope config, which would be nice. I think, you know, search, it's nice to give it a bit of a custom feel. So what you can find weather in, and then you can get that showing up when you hit your search, which is looks nice. All right, so let's change the divider here. So we got a nice, maybe put the same maroon there. So let's put a divider. Sorry, divider color, and we can just stick this maroon there. Yeah, then that should look quite nice, matching the logo. Cineoscope starts to look a lot better than it did originally. One thing we can also do, just for fun, I think, is let's set the background color maybe slightly off white, because it'll look nice. I tried it.
Marcus, you want to say a few words about what the scope tool is that we see every now and then?
All right. Yeah, I can do that. Let me just. Okay, cool.
And while Marcus is typing, I should mention as well that this Unity Scopes tool can only be run on Ubuntu 14.10. So if you want to develop scopes and use it, you should, as a developer, you should move to 14.10 or install it on a VM. Otherwise, on 14.04, you can always run your apps on or your scopes in the emulator.
Right. I'm just going to do a little match.
We should get the idea, and we need to move on from a timing perspective. Otherwise, we're not finishing our day today.
Okay, all right. I am. Okay, don't worry about it. I was going to do some magic to try and show you some of the other, show you from the overview. But anyway, so we get the idea. Let's move on. That's some attributes that we can set in our scope config. obviously, other small changes like what we want the preview to look like. I think Powell will cover a bit of that in category layouts, and yeah, obviously changing these descriptions and things you can do as well, but we don't have to go into that. So, all right, so basically we've branded it. We can move on now. Unless there's any other questions about branding, we can move on to settings. Okay. All right. Okay. So for settings, what you need to do is in your data folder. I'm just going to browse there. I've got it. In your data folder, you have your ini file, which is the file we were just editing. What you need for settings is to create another ini file, which is of the same name and has a dash settings at the end of the name. This file will then contain your settings for the scope. We also then need to actually add this to the CMake list. We see that we have our other ini file here. Let's make sure we install this one as well. And one other place to remember to put it is also in your source CMake. Here you see there's a comment, put the ini file into your build directory so the test tools can find it. You need for the. All right, so that should configure it. We should now see our settings file. This is the setting file, sorry, I copied the other one. So now we have a blank settings file. There's the name. It's a little long. So in here, we can put a bunch of settings for our scope. And settings are things like, they're settings to configure the scope at runtime. Example that I'll use is changing the temperature units. Currently it defaults to metric, so let's see what's involved in putting units into this thing. So we create a section, units, square brackets. There's a bunch, as I say again, there is a section in the documentation for this. I'm not going to keep going back to it, it's going to take me really long. But this is all documented. What parameters you stick into this file is documented. So we say type list, the temperature units, unity. Then we will have display values, which is the values we want in our list. And we want to choose between metric and we also want to be metric to start with. So now we have this setting, which if we run our scope now, we should actually have a cog show up in our scope there. And what will show up is our new setting for temperature units, and you can select your metric imperial. And what that does is basically selects 0 and 1, the index of your values you have. So let's actually dive into the code now a bit. This is, let me quickly show you what happens in the client. We have this method weather that calls into our API and gets some weather results. Easy enough to see quickly. That's where we have our metric default. So let's add a new argument here to take in and we're going to have to add that to the header as well. Yeah. And all we want to do is basically, instead of using metric, we want to put our unit system. All right, now going into query where we call it. Here basically the query is split into two sections. Current, which gets our current weather, which is the first section. Then we push one result to the top, and we have the second section, which is our forecast, and we push a couple forecast days into there. So we can see here we're calling weather and we're putting London in default. Let's put in a little bit of code here to get our unit. So let's say we want to get our unit system. Okay, so now we want to actually get our settings from whatever the user has selected in the settings menu. It's really simple. You just call them. It's on your base. Settings will return you a variant map. Obviously, this probably could be done a little neater and maybe with some error checking, but let's just say, we want to look for our units value in there, and we want to get it as an int. So let's say if the int is 0, we want metric. And sorry. And if what did I do wrong there? Question mark. Okay. So now we have our unit setting, and we can actually pass that into our calls to weather. So pretty simple. You just call your settings. You can get which setting you want, which is corresponds with the name I put as the section delimiter, and we can run the scope. And what we should see now is degrees Celsius. Oh, there is one bit of a tricky thing, but anyway, if we set imperial, we will see immediately a larger number, which is Fahrenheit, but there's a little bit of code required to change that C into an F, which is easy enough. I don't know if it's worth sticking it in. Let me just quickly. So we want to do the same thing, get our unit, and this one will be, degrees C is a degree value, and degrees F. Okay. Then instead of C, we just want to put unit or not. And there we have Fahrenheit. The forecast also needs the update, but we can see it there. Fahrenheit. Change it to metric, surface again, and you get Celsius. Yeah, so it's pretty simple to use settings. You have other types of settings you can set. You have a list. There's string, integer, or number, Boolean. So you can add a bunch of settings. Some examples of settings will be maybe setting your hometown or setting the I don't know, turning on forecast, turning on no forecast or something. So yeah, that is using settings. Any other questions at this point?
I've got a quick question on the ini files in general, both the settings and the main ini file. I haven't played with it in a bit, but I seem to remember that they can be internationalized, right? They support the same mechanism as desktop files, right?
Right. Yeah, so what you can do is say, I don't know other languages, but if you do want this to be localized, the format is to stick in here, well, I'm going to put N for English, but you can basically put your language, your locale code into there, and for metric and imperial, you would change, obviously, for the specific language. And that is documented here, as I said. So yeah, it is localizable, yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. All right. So if there isn't any...
There's a question right now on IRC that might be interesting. It's related to queries. Aleko is asking, how do you make the query refresh when the settings change?
Yeah, okay, so that is something that needs to be implemented still. There are a few situations where scopes need to be refreshed. We're all working on a system where we will use a notification system for refreshing scopes when certain things change like this. It currently isn't supported, so unfortunately the answer now is the next time you open the scope, it will change. Or you can start a search, or add a space and remove a space. That you kind of have to start a new search query for it to change at the moment. But it's definitely being looked into.
Cool. There's another question from Asimako on IRC. Can I skip preview and execute URL link directly from query results?
Yes, you can. You can, yes. These are basically, you basically push a result in the form of a canned query, and your canned query will, you can set a URI value on your canned query, and that URI will point to what you want to execute. We have a couple, there are a couple preset endpoints on that URL dispatcher will use, things like opening up an app or opening up a settings page. This is documented, I think, in our documentation as well as URL dispatcher. So yeah, that is my answer. I'm not sure if that's good enough.
But the catch is that apart from a few special cases, it really only works for you if you use canned queries, which means a scope query really. So scope // So this is basically like a new search that is going to be executed against a scope that you point to. So in other words, you cannot open an arbitrary URI. You have to, in most cases, you have to go through the preview. And this is a conscious decision to have a consistent UI. I'm not sure if I didn't bring more confusion. Sorry.
Yes.
Probably you did. So let us. I think we have 20 minutes to go, and we will have 3 topics, which I think gets a little bit challenging. So, reminder what we have still on the menu. It's about departments, it's about using localization, and it's about structuring sections or departments. Sections, sorry. So,
I can run through location very quickly, if we want.
Very quickly means 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay, then let's go through that, and then it's up to Pavel.
Okay, all right. Okay, so first thing we want to do if we want to use location is there is a scope config entry which is explained here. Oh, I just revealed something that's missing, sorry. I will add that as soon as we're done here. So one entry that you need to add here is location data needed, and we want to set true. This basically will do 2 things. It'll add a setting to your scope that allows you to enable and disable your location data on a scope, or for the user to do that, and also it basically tells the backend that it should send information about location to the scope. All right, so basically it's pretty simple. It's as simple as using settings, maybe even simpler. So what you can do is here, let's say we're going to default to London when we start, but if we sorry, let me go back a step. Where this location data comes from is in your metadata. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our location out of the search metadata, and the way you get that is by calling the method search metadata. That gives you your metadata, and let's do it this way. Let's just store this in meta. Sorry, there is one thing that I do need to add here. You need to actually include the search metadata header to link. All right, so back to where we were. We're going to get the metadata. In this metadata, we are going to look to see if we have location. So there's a method on here, has location. So if we do have location, we want to set our current to client. What we want to pass into weather is the city that we get back from location. So what we do then is we have our meta. We can get our location because we know. Because we know we have location. It's going to be that one, and we can get our city name. That is pretty much all you need to do, except that it doesn't accept string. Oh yes, sorry. The unit system I added. Yeah, so this way, if we have some location data, it's going to search for our current location instead of bringing up London, which it did. Good, because I disabled location data. So if we enable location data, unless everything explodes, there you go, Durban, South Africa. Perfect. Yeah, so with location data, I'm not going to get random London weather, and I can get my local weather. And that's how easy using the location is.
Unfortunately, it took you more than 2 minutes. Anyway, pretty fast still. Bummer. So let's catch up on a couple of questions we have on the IRC channel. Somebody's asking, like, do we also, or can you build scopes in Python? Answer, no. And it's also not on the roadmap to enable Python development there. Next question was like, are the Go language bindings ready enough to build scopes? Definite answer, yes. So we even run some, or on the phone we have some scopes running that are implemented in Go. So it's fully usable. You can use those. Documentation, I pasted a link in the IRC channel, so I think afterwards we will make that more prominently visible. It's a little bit hairy maybe to get started, so we don't have an easy template. You just get started, but there is a Launchpad project which you would just kind of check out and then start editing on top of that. So that's something we will improve as we go along, but in principle it's supported, it works. The next question is like, can you explain how you would build a permanent cache for things like images, for example, or even JSON? So we have an API call that allows you to, or that will return you a location for a directory, which you, as a scope of which you own that directory, you can write into that directory whatever you want. So it's really up to you what you put in that directory. You can use it for caching, for whatever. It's really up to you. So it's not like we have tons of convenience classes around that, but we give you a file path and you can mess around as you like.
However, let me add something. The scope might be stopped at any time, usually after 20 seconds or so of inactivity. So what you want probably to do is make sure you save your cache, for example, in the stop method of scope base. You override it. Just make sure it doesn't take too long, because otherwise the scope will be killed with hammer if you are too slow. So yeah.
Last question here, how can you change departments at runtime when, for example, a different filter is selected? Different question. I think maybe what you're meaning, like, what happens if you change with filter, what you call filter is something I think we call departments. So whenever you change the department, basically it corresponds to a completely new query. And so if a user changes a department, then with that department, you get a new query sent to the run method, and then you just return the new results. So it's just a completely new query, and with that you display what you want to display. So no magic there.
So Thomas, just a quick question. I know that we're going to talk about departments in a minute anyway, but to clarify, is there no difference anymore between departments and filters? I'm familiar with the filter context from Unity 7 from the desktop, and I'm wondering if there's the same thing on the phone.
It's two different things. So currently what you see in the drop-down box, that's really departments. And you can realize some kind of filtering, obviously, with departments. So, technically that works. What we, from a technical point of view, or from the Scopes team point of view, refer to filters, however, is something else. When we talk about filters, that's still on the roadmap. That's something like, you can really filter, like in Amazon, you can enter price ranges, dates, values, ratings, and stuff like that. And that is not available as we speak. As that we have it on the roadmap, it's not there today. So the only filter possibilities in quotes is really changing a different department or utilizing departments from it.
Okay, thanks.
So, Pavel, floor is yours.
Yeah, so I just shared my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pavel,
There
you
will
might
be
want to make it a bit bigger because we're seeing rather Marcus on the screen. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. There will be less typing on my side because there's a little bit more code involved, and I don't think it would work if I was typing that or even copying it from some other file. So anyway, departments. So departments, they are similar to filters, like Thomas said, but the main difference is that departments is a hierarchical structure. Basically, you can think of it as if you take, for example, a store, let's say Amazon, and you have departments that basically divide your items into different sets. So you can have books, electronics, and in electronics you can have TVs, computers, that kind of stuff. So this can be an arbitrary hierarchy. So the way it works in scopes is with every search, your scope can respond with a list of departments that should be shown in the UI. And this can be a nested structure, as I said. So you can have sub-departments, etc. And as your search is executed, you will also receive an ID of the department that was selected by user. If anything, of course. By default, the ID of the selected department, or by default, the department, if nothing is selected, or if you are browsing a top level of your shop, is an empty ID. So I'm just using the same scope template as Marcus. I haven't incorporated the changes from Marcus, so this is again a starting template with some stuff added by me to support departments in the weather scope. So what I did is I created a little helper method that is going to populate my departments menu. So I drafted here what I just described, what departments are. So basically with every search, the scope is supposed to respond with an object corresponding to current department. It needs to respond, send in the response the parent of it, and also the children, if there are any, of course. So what I'm doing in this helper method is I'm basically creating a root department, a top level one. I just name it current, and I'm also setting the query that's going to be executed if you visit it. The query is just the can't query concept we have in Scopes API. So it points to a scope, which is the same scope we are currently running, which is Open Weather Map. The query string, which is going to be empty string, and the department ID, which is an empty string again. So this is the root of my tree of departments. So below that, I decided to create a forecast department, which is going to show you more detailed forecast that the Open Weather Map scope currently has. It's going to show you forecast for next 5 days, and for every day you will have a forecast for next 3 hours. So there will be quite some data. And what I'm doing is I'm attaching this forecast department to the root department. So I'm really going to have a simple structure like that one. After I'm done defining my departments, I need to register that. Registering means they are going to be pushed to the UI and they will be displayed. And a little word of warning here. This method can throw if you mess something up. and there are a few things you might get wrong, at least at the beginning when you are starting learning that stuff. It's always worth catching the exceptions here, and output makes it very easy to spot issues. And the issues can be, for example, if you have two departments and you use same ID by mistake, the IDs need to be unique, or different issue like the shell says that the user is now visiting department foo, and for some reason you are not responding with that department, with the structure that describes that department. So there are a couple of issues that you might hit here if you're not careful. Okay, so back to the code where I'm actually making use of this method. So it's run again, and this is where I call it. So the general design decision that we have chosen in Scopes is, at least it's valid at the moment, is that we only show departments if you are browsing or in surfacing mode. What that means is only if the search query is empty, and that's what I am doing here. This is a bit of a logic that changes the behavior of the scope. So what I basically want to do is I only want to show the departments. I only want to show the current weather if you are at the top of the department's hierarchy. So you want to look at the current weather. Let me actually run this thing. Let's see how this menu that I just defined looks. So at the top, you can see this is the departments menu, and it's very simple right now. It's just the current department, which is the default one, which is basically the logic that the scope has at the start. And this is a forecast that I implemented from scratch. So let's see what forecast does. So let's go to the Open Weather Map API for a moment. So what I want is I want to implement a new call to the Open Weather API that gets me 3-hour forecast. So I go to client CPP, and I added a new method, forecast hourly. I was lazy, so I just copy pasted the method that does the daily forecast because the JSON is very, very similar. I only think that I had to really add here was, of course, the HTTP call. that's slightly different for hourly forecast. And in the parsing here, I had to fetch some additional data, which is basically an hour, a timestamp, essentially. Okay, back to scope again. No, sorry, back to query again. So yeah, let me skip that part. It's just the existing code that handles the current department, the default department. So this is the entire block of code that I just put in a if statement. This is the old code of the template. Now also, if you remember the previous scope or the default scope, so it shows you a 7-day forecast for one item per day. So this is handled here basically. So now I want to check which is the department I'm currently visiting, and depending on that, I show the more detailed forecast or the daily one like before. So again, this is the default handling that we had before in the old scope, and this is my case, which is very similar. I only change the handling of the results that are incoming from the client call, and I change the category creation. So about categories. So what about categories? So as you can see there, the results are grouped into categories. So in the default view, you have just a single category which says London GB for the current weather, And you have a second category where you group results for 7-day forecast. What I need in my new forecast department, I want it divided. I want the categories divided per day, and for every day I want results corresponding to 3-hour forecast. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically iterating over the weather results. Every result is a basically single result item for 3-hour time span, and I had to put a logic here to basically create categories whenever I see a new date coming. So there's a little magic there where I take the date out and it's different than the previous date. It means, okay, this is a new day. So I'm going to create a new category. Then it's a result, and it's the same as it was before. So let's see how it looks. I think we're running out of time. So going to forecast. So now, as you can see, you can have a single you have a single category for every day. You can expand it, and you see it's now also for every 3 hours. There's a result for every 3 hours time span. Okay, let's go. Let's now talk about a little about how to customize the thing. So every category can be customized in terms how the cards look, if they are small, big, etc., how they are laid out. So, for example, horizontal, vertical, etc., etc. So you normally do that in the code if you want a permanent change. So this is what you want to touch. This is pretty well documented on the web page that Marcus shown. However, it quickly becomes tedious to change it in the code and just to see how it looks and then play around, etc. So what is a very nice way to do that is actually to use Scope tool. So what you can do is you pick your category here, you click override, and now you can play with the layout definition. So let's say you want carousel. Confirm. Oh, I probably made a typo. Okay, I'm not sure what I did wrong. Let's see in list. Okay, that works. So I made a horizontal list out of it. What else I can do? Let's see, large, if it works. Okay, slightly larger. Okay, when I'm happy with these changes, I can copy paste them to code and make them permanent. So let's do it, for example, for this. Okay, now every category uses a horizontal list, every category in my department. Do you have any questions so far? I think we are nearly out of time.
I think we're running out of time. So if you show the code very quickly, just to, I think, one last sentence on that piece of code. The string you see, it's simple JSON code. Roll up.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So it's just JSON which you can modify. It's basically two things that you have here. One is the template, and the other object is components. So the template really tells you, like, what is the layout of the category itself, roughly speaking, and the component object allows you to customize the card layout itself. So that's basically the high-level explanation of those two things. Just play around. All the values are fully documented, and play around, and you will see what you can do with it. Good. Do we have any more questions on the RC?
I think we're good in terms of questions.
Okay. Good.
All right, so I think we can just wrap it up. That was a really good session. I myself have learned quite a lot as well. So thanks a lot, Marcus, Pavel, and Thomas.
You're welcome. So if there are any questions, drop us a mail at any time at the Ubuntu phone mailing list, or use Ask Ubuntu.com, whatever. We will try to answer as best as we can, as in time as we can. You can also reach us on the Ubuntu IRC channels that are also all the time available, and there should be almost 24 hours anybody from our team around, since we span the globe pretty much. So just shoot questions, we will answer, and we'll help you.
All right.
Okay.
So thanks everyone for listening, and see you at the other sessions. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.